here at this press conference. Thank you for all who are in attendance. I wish to certainly welcome the media, the listening audience, but also members of the Progressive Labour Party government and parliamentary team, the Premier, other members of Cabinet, Jason Wade, who is the member for the constituency 30, which I believe the Southampton Princess resides in, and other members of the Senate and others and technical teams. Thank you all for being here for this very important announcement. Since announcing the Fairmont Southampton SDO submission was available for review in April of this year, the general public has been captivated by discussions around the proposed development, and rightly so. The property's location, clearly visible from a major road artery, makes it one of Bermuda's most iconic hotel properties. And so it was no surprise that residents from all walks of life have passionately shared their views on the SDO and intensely monitored its development. For that, I want to thank all those who took their time to make their submissions regarding the proposed SDO through the proper channels. Any decisions made regarding this SDO will shape the future of our country for generations. And these decisions should only be made with substantial public input. With that said, with much consideration, I have decided to approve the Southampton Fairmont SDO. I wish to share with you my reasonings for doing so, which was in the national interest and best interest of the majority of Bermuda's residents. As the government continues the execution of the Economic Recovery Plan and, by extension, the Economic Development Strategy, it is critical that we remain focused on supporting sustainable economic growth, employment, and more significant economic activity for all Bermuda's residents. Approving this SDO will help strengthen Bermuda's global visibility and competitiveness as a tourism destination and promote future investment in our island. Economic impacts. To that end, PricewaterhouseCoopers has calculated that the economic impact of this project is estimated to be $1.4 billion in GDP at present value. Of that number, approximately $300 million is attributable to job creation during construction, and an additional $1.1 billion is attributable to the broader impact of the demand for local services to support residences and businesses. These services include food, wholesale and retail trade, financial and insurance services, real estate, international business, and of course the construction sector. For tourism, the government also continues working with our tourism partners to increase the island's hotel inventory. We are adding even more rooms, supporting more airlift and jobs, and the agility to host larger conferences and events in the future. It is no secret that the closing of the hotel had a dramatic, to put it mildly, impact on the availability of airlift to Bermuda. This has not only impacted tourism overall, but has had a direct negative impact on the operation and success of other existing properties. The successful redevelopment of the Southampton Hotel can potentially make Bermuda more attractive for additional investment into our visitor industry. The recent announcement around the Elbow Beach Hotel has made it clear that we, an island, will benefit from additional beds and additional tourism economic activity that will attract investment. The success of this development should allow Bermuda in the international environment to be seen as an attractive jurisdiction to consider luxury tourism investment. Around employment, as there are some in Bermuda who remain unemployed, I am happy to share that construction related to the SDO will create at least 100 jobs from the onset of development. Furthermore, it will generate at least 57 permanent jobs for hospitality workers once in operation. This number is in addition to the jobs created through the use of the previously mentioned local services. Around population, this project will also support population growth. It is well known that Bermuda is facing population challenges, which include an aging population, low fertility rates, and more of our young people moving overseas, and families. The government aims to increase the population by some estimated 8,400 people over the next 5 years. In support of this, the properties included for purchase will provide more space for up to 247 residents to live. This is important because as more jobs are created, we must ensure an adequate number of places for these workers to live. Our housing market not meeting that demand would result in unsustainable increases in rent, which we are already seeing today, right now. These benefits have tremendous potential to help the lives of many of Bermuda's residents and their families. While I accept those opposed to the project and its potential impact on the property, as a minister responsible for the environment, I want to assure the public that I am mindful of these concerns by including conditions in the SDO that will provide proper checks and balances required to ensure that most concerns are addressed. Planning conditions can set out parameters for an approved development or require the approval of more detailed information at various stages of the development. Such conditions are necessary in order to ensure the acceptability of the development, such as to offset adverse environmental impacts or mitigate challenges identified within the planning assessment. This is very common with SDOs, and members who choose to do their research will see that. Conditions are almost always implanted into SDO submissions and approved by the minister with such. From the outset, the SDO will indicate that each phase of the development must be submitted as an application for final planning permission to the Department of Planning. The conditions will set out the details which must be submitted with each such application, as well as items which must be approved by the Department of Planning prior to submission of any planning application. The first condition of the SDO will set out the duration of the planning permission granted, which will broadly align with the phasing provided in the SDO submission, namely Phase 1, Turtle Hill and Gulf tourism units, Phase 2, residential Hilltop villas and GSL villas, Phase 3, residential South Road townhomes. This condition will also stipulate that no units will be occupied without, i.e., a certificate of completion and occupancy will not be issued for any units until the hotel has been fully refurbished and reopened. Very important point. Before any planning application is submitted, the SDO will require completion of the following: confirmation of all protected conservation areas by the Minister of Home Affairs, the submission and approval of an outline conservation management plan for the entire site, inclusive of timescales for implementation and subsequent detailed CMPs, meaning conservation management plans. Improvements to the railway trail, namely the replacement of an existing staircase with a ramp, installations of lighting, and removal of invasive species. Installation of protective fencing around the historic protection area on Turtle Hill. Installation of 10 additional bluebird boxes within the application site. I believe there are already bluebird boxes there, but these will be added to the ones that are already there. The property of this Southampton hotel, just to be clear, is not by far an example of excellent environmental stewardship. Most of the property is littered with invasives, with minimal presence of endemic species or plants, or any other endemic species of Bermuda life that we know of. Little attention has been made over the years to ensure the preservation of native qualities of the open space. Conservation of open space will not be successful by just leaving the land alone, as some have cared to argue. It comes with careful, laid-out plans, with objectives clearly set, with environmental enhancements and ultimately sustainable preservation in mind. Part of the goal of the Conservation Management Plan is to bring improvement to the situation over time. And the Property Redevelopment Plan will stipulate how the conservation aspect of this property can improve. We must bear in mind that golf courses are not, and I know of anywhere, whether locally or internationally, to be places that promote environmental protection of species or good environmental management. It is our goal with this property, to ensure that going forward, best practices are employed to ensure that environmental qualities of the overall development, which exists on private property, I must bear, will be greatly enhanced. The first planning application to be submitted will need to include details pertaining to the entire site in respect of the following: full details of the type of tourism accommodation to be provided, including whether units could be used as residences for part of the year. A design and access statement inclusive of internal, vehicular, and pedestrian access arrangements to ensure safe movement within the site and public realm designs. A transport statement and travel plan to promote sustainable use of transportation and identify measures to reduce trips by private car. A revised outline parking plan, reducing the number of car parking spaces to a practical minimum and identifying the spaces of the northern parking area, which could be continually available to members of the public. A strategic energy statement setting out the minimum amount of renewable energy which would be generated within each phase, the infrastructure which will be installed to achieve this value, and measures to reduce energy consumption and impact on the grid. Considering recent events, I think this is a goal that should be pursued by Southampton Hotel, but also any commercial development in this island. A strategic sewage, water, and wastewater management plan, including full details of existing and proposed infrastructure, the wastewater treatment plant, decommissioning and removal of existing wastewater treatment plant, and details of the supply of fresh water to the site, inclusive of an in-principle agreement with Bermuda Water Works to supply the entire site. A sustainable drainage strategy, measures to mitigate runoff, reducing the use of impermeable surfacing, and incorporating sustainable measures of flood risk mitigation. A strategic waste management plan, setting out details for the disposal of trash from the site, including the size and approximate location of containers, bin storage areas, routes for vehicles, timetables for collection, and written approval of the company or government department who would be responsible for collection. A desk-based archaeological survey assessment, which details any archaeological site investigations which may be required, together with methodologies to avoid disturbance of or proper removal or recording of any notable artifacts which may be present within any development areas. A strategic construction environmental management plan, a structural assessment of the nearest properties to the site on Fairmont Drive before and after construction, phase one to detect impacts for vibration to be carried out at the expense of the developer. A public engagement strategy identifying how the local community will be kept updated on the project and informed when development is due to take place, and how neighbors can arrange for the developer to arrange for any repairs or cleaning of their property if affected by construction works. Once the SDO has been drafted and gazetted, the public will be able to review the complete list of conditions online at the Department of Planning. This is a summary of those conditions I have read, but there'll be more in detail once the order and once it's up on the planning website. I am confident you will agree that the government is taking every action to minimize as much as possible any adverse environmental impacts and mitigate challenges identified within the planning assessment. In closing, the Fairmont Southampton Hotel project stands to be the largest construction project in Bermuda's history. But we do not want to be where we were in 2019. Everybody remembers what it was like then. The closing of a hotel and the impact that had. We don't want to go back there. We need a plan ahead for more vibrant future for our country. This SDO will add many desperately needed tourism beds to the island's inventory, create at least 100 long-term construction jobs following the hotel's reopening, and provide $1.4 billion of economic impact, which will benefit generations for many years to come. Thank you, everyone, and I'm happy to take questions.
Good afternoon, Minister Gary Foster-Skelton of Bermuda Broadcasting.
Afternoon.
First of all, let's just talk a bit about the process that's gone into this. The SDO, it's had a lot of public eyes on it. Now, previously, when we have spoken about the SDO for Riddles Bay, you said that the Development Applications Board had to recommend that the SDO be denied because they were forced legally to do so. That's the same kind of thing that West End Properties have said about this SDO. They weren't surprised that the board were saying it should be denied, but it doesn't. When you look at the conclusions of the report to the DAB, it doesn't come across as saying they're just not ticking the legal boxes. It uses phrases like what the development, the harm that would be caused by the proposed development, that the proposal is considered to represent an unsustainable form of development, which would result in several adverse environmental effects. And the report stated owners have failed to demonstrate a need for the proposed development or shown that the site can adequately accommodate it. And this was unanimously agreed with by the Development Applications Board. So, with all that dramatic language, I ask you, Minister, do you think the board recommended denying the application because it didn't tick legal boxes, or because they actually believe this development could be bad for Bermuda?
Thank you for the question. This is just an example of how there's clear independence between the board and the minister and this process. They came across with their own independent opinion, which was a recommendation, as it always is in these cases. They cannot vary zonings. They cannot approve directly certain changes in certain types of planning applications of this significance. And the SDO process is there to address that.
But they didn't talk about rezoning.
May I finish my answer to the question, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. But it was just that, a recommendation. And that's how the law outlines. I carefully reviewed their submission. I clearly did not agree with their conclusions. And I came to a conclusion on my own as the minister to support the future economic development of this country. They, I'm sure, saw significant material that caused them to come to that conclusion. I didn't agree with a lot of their assumptions, but that's the independence of the process. I came to a different conclusion that I felt would ensure the success and long-term national interest of this country. And I stand by that decision, irrespective of the board's recommendation.
Okay. So, when it comes to an issue like this, is it the case that because the economy, does that trump all else? Are all environmental planning laws, all these things have less importance than the potential but not yet realized economic impact of the hotel?
No. Significantly, my decision was based on very strong economic premises, and there is plenty of documentation online of which you can see the basis of that. I've outlined them in the statement, but as you can also see, I outlined very clear direction as the Minister of the Environment to very specific protections that are going to be conditions in this SDO to essentially be responsive to the concerns raised by the numerous persons who gave their views on this. So there is a balance here. But I do believe that the economic priorities stand strong for us to make the choice, for the choice I made. But all the other, and I outlined in my statement, cultural, and if you see in the documents, there are cultural clear things around ensuring that any archaeological value to the land is protected. Clearly, I'm ensuring that any environmental value to the land, whatever little it is at present, will be protected, but also an enhancement. And other issues that arise, you can see, we're ensuring that certain qualities of the redevelopment will be publicly in favor of the public good, such as the adjustment of the road, the adjustments to the trail, and other features will be provided in the SDO as conditions that support the environmental priorities, enhancement, as well as protection. But the economic priorities here certainly are the strongest, but all are being considered. The job creation that we know will come from this, the spin-offs of that job creation are all things that are crucial to the country's overall development. But all those priorities I have spoken to very clearly, and I believe that they are the content of the full considerations that I have made. Economics are very strong, obviously, and I've outlined the details of that, but all the other pieces are also factored in and included in this, and I certainly took them into consideration.
So you spoke about that you're going to balance things, but it comes down to you, and you said responses from government to our questions have said this is the legal process, but with the SDO, isn't that ultimately a legal instrument created by governments past to circumvent planning laws, since this allows you as Home Affairs Minister to ultimately override every other opinion or voice with the stroke of a pen? Isn't that an example of an undemocratic process?
You are absolutely wrong.
Okay.
SDOs are a feature of the planning law. They are the instrument of the Planning Act. They don't disregard, they don't actually go around any other provision of the planning law. It is a feature of the Act. Section 15, if you have not read it, sir, is very clear. It provides for SDOs in the legislation to make decisions by the minister in the national interest. There's nothing circumventing that. It is clearly a special provision, but it's also a provision that's in law that is used very sparingly in very clear terms of which the law outlines. So I reject any suggestion, sir, that this is somehow circumventing the rest of the law. Everybody in this process has played their legal role. I believe that the process has outlined the independence of each organ in this role, whether it be the department, whether it be the board, and myself as a minister. So I reject that assertion, absolutely. And the law does not, in my view, support your assertion.
Earlier this year, when Sir John Swan reversed his opinion on the SDO, said it should be granted, he, in an interview with us, he did say, people say it's too much. Maybe it is too much, but we need it. Is that the position that we're in, that economically, tourism, and politically for this government, you need to have this SDO granted?
This is a need for the people of Bermuda and for their economic livelihood, their social livelihood, their welfare. That is what this is for. And let me just add a little bit more to this. This is not the most unique property of this type that is combining hotel development with residential. We have a number of other properties, whether it's the Rosewood Tuckers Point, Newstead Belmont Hills, the Lauren, the Reefs, Coral Beach, all have similar models. This just happens to be the largest of this type. This model was well established in Bermuda for the past 20 years of using residential development to support hotel development. It is quite common here. It's well established here, and it's well established in the region. So we're not going that much in a wrong direction. This just happens to be the most significant development of this type, but it is a long established type of development in Bermuda. For the past 20 years, we've seen properties go this direction, and they are successful properties.
And the current standing SDO did permit for properties, but this is much more than that.
It is, but it's a large property, so it is what it is, and it's been evaluated on its own merits, not because of anything else. And I do believe that the case has been made for why this will be good for Bermuda. This government is committed to doing what's best for Bermuda. We've done numerous things, such as lower taxes for the majority of people. We have tried to do our best to control the cost of living with things such as duty-free on things like fresh fruits and vegetables and other things. We've done things to help our people get through the hard and difficult places that they are. And this government is always prepared to face those challenges. This was a big challenge, but the government has faced it, and we've made the best decision for the people of Bermuda and for the long-term development of this country. This is the anchor hotel. Everything rides on its success. Airlift, visitor capacity, not just for Southampton, but also for every property on this island. And I can assure you, my discussions with hoteliers, they want this because they know it will help them in their own success. Not just Southampton Princess, but every property in this island.
And of that I have no doubt. But my final question on moving forward, the SDO, you grant the SDO, and things move forward with the hotel. I do want to note that previously it's been said that the renovation of the hotel is more than 400 million. I believe Premier David Burt, Finance Minister, who's here, who can correct me if I'm wrong, previously said there is more than 200 million coming from the senior lenders, which includes Starwood Capital, I believe. And then we've got the local lending of 75 million guaranteed by government. Then there are mezzanine lenders. What it looks like here is that West End Properties have about 20%. This is what I'm looking at, are putting in about 20%. And it's a matter of skin in the game. From my understanding from others in the hospitality industry, that's quite a low amount for the owners of the property to put in. And I'm just, are you certain, are you confident, certain that as you grant this SDO, West End Gencom isn't going to ask for more?
I am not qualified, nor am I have responsibility for financing matters. But I will say this, one thing is that we know that based on what we've heard so far, that the financing that is being arranged fully finances this actual development for its duration. That's one thing we know. I cannot speak to what the future may hold, but I can certainly tell you that that is the case. But I will leave the finance questions because my remit was in the planning side and the merits around the planning aspect of this development. So I will stick to that. But certainly the public information has been that this is a fully financed development from where it is now and when it will start to its conclusion.
And when will we hear, have you already spoken to West End? Do we know?
I have not had any direct conversations with West End at all, sir. Not myself.
Can the Finance Minister say, Premier and Finance Minister tell us, since he's here, if West End have been informed? Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister.
You're welcome.
Morning, Minister. Trevor Lindsay, TNN News. You mentioned about parking, some form of parking. It's always been an issue with Southampton Princess, with parking. Maybe they've had special events. Is there any plans to have multi-parking that will assist the hotel first and then the units thereafter?
Thank you for the question. I outlined in the statement that there will be travel plan, and there certainly will be, as a requirement of the development, to have plans outlined in advance as to how they're going to accommodate parking for not only staff, but also residents. I did outline it in the statement. I can make sure you get a copy so that you can see what we've outlined, but you also will get to see the actual detailed conditions, which will give you more detail around that. But those are plans, particularly in relation to the hotel, will have to be done at that time to show how they're going to accommodate those issues.
Do you anticipate, you've granted the SDO, do you anticipate pushback from residents in the area that wasn't in support of the development?
At this point, I cannot predict what will happen. I do believe that.
Or are you prepared and ready?
I'm sorry?
Are you prepared and ready for pushback?
I'm prepared for anything. This decision has been made. So whatever comes thereafter, I'm ready for. I know I've made the best decision on behalf of our country and all the people, whether they live in Southampton or St. George's or to Somerset. The best decision has been made on their behalf by this government, because we're prepared to make the tough decisions.
I'm not sure, but the Southampton Princess original plans were modified, and this approval is on the modified version, yes?
Yeah. Yeah, and that perhaps is a credit to the developer who took the feedback that they received within their first iteration into mind, and they made adjustments to accommodate those changes, not only with hearing the feedback from the actual submissions, but also from their community outreach. So that's how this process was designed to work, to ensure that there's public input. I do believe that many of those suggestions is why you saw their adjustment and their second submission of an EIS and around taking in those considerations.
Can you confirm how many units will be constructed?
In relation to the residences or hotel?
Both.
I'm sorry, yes. Just a lot of figures I have to deal with. 250 residences and just over 500, and I think around 86 rooms, I think was the number that will be a part of the hotel. So 250 residents is the total.
When do we anticipate, or the government anticipates, work to start at that facility?
Well, that will come after the order is issued. There may be preliminary works that they're doing, which they will certainly get guidance on doing to prepare the site, and they will have to get the appropriate permissions for that. But the actual development itself, once the SDO is properly issued by myself, that in sense gives the legal space for them to begin the formal development of the site. That will come within a matter of weeks.
Thank you, Minister.
Taking time to draft it and get it right.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Minister. Jonathan Bell from the Royal Gazette.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Afternoon. Yeah, afternoon. You made reference several times, sir, to your decision. I wanted to know, to what extent did Cabinet input, what role did that play in the decision? Was Cabinet part of it?
We state that Section 15 of the Planning Act is very clear. This is a decision of the minister. Cabinet would have given me permission to move forward with the appropriate drafting and policy development around the drafting instructions and to actually issue the order. That's the only role that Cabinet plays. but the minister makes the decision.
Yeah, yeah, no, understood. Obviously, what happens in cabinet is private, but with that in mind, still, can you tell us anything about discussions that would have been had with cabinet or anything of that nature?
No.
When can we see the SDO going online, sir?
Once it's drafted, and we expect that to be done within the next couple of weeks.
Within the next couple of weeks?
Yes, sir.
Got you. And following from that, do you have a best guess estimate on when we could see the hotel be open?
There's a schedule outlined in the documents online as to the different phases. Phase 1 will start as soon as, I think phase 1 will be for now until 2025, and then there's phase 2 and phase 3. This is a development that's supposed to go on in total, because of course the hotel is the first development, which will come on, and whenever they start, they have a timeline to complete. But this development is based on the timeline provided in the documents that have been filed, which you can see online. It's supposed to go as far as 2040. It will be completed around 2040. So it's quite a long timeline, 20-something years of long-term development. But that's all outlined in the documents online, and I'm sure you can talk to West End Properties about their plans about that.
Off the top of your head, though, do you have a rough idea of when we can expect to see the hotel open?
Again, I would implore you to contact West End Properties on their plans. That would be the best thing, rather than, I'm not going to speak for West End Properties and their private development plans.
Righto. People will want to know, it's been the planning and the development application board. I mean, the question will spring to mind, so I'll just raise it now. People will ask, what's the point of all of the consultation if you can then go above it and make your own decision against their recommendations?
I think that's an interesting question. Not including the rest of our public involved with a very nationally important decision is somehow not seen of any value. I certainly reject that. I reject that proposition, but those submissions have actually been fed into this SDO. The very conditions that were outlined that I generally refer to are a product of the public consultation. Not that we couldn't have come to some of those on our own, but certainly if you go back to the original submission from the developer, they had a large, substantial public engagement. Their changes is a reflection of their public engagement. The reduction of the number of units that they moved from to what, and also some of the other changes are mindful. They'll be like conservation areas that they're going to be creating. The actual adjustments to the road, all these things are a product, and other things that are a product of the conditions is a product of that public consultation. So it has worked. It has been of value. And this government changed the law so that we could have that, because we believe that it's valuable to processes like these, with it not just being an exclusive decision of the minister, but that ministerial decision is informed by public feedback. And this SDO reflects that. That's how this government operates. Engaging the public, digesting the feedback, and ensuring that it's in the content of our decisions.
And I mean, so the 2009 SDO for 130 units is not sufficient for this site then?
Well, that precedes this period of time.
Oh, yeah.
In this consultation, I think you have to note that. So what we're doing now is very different from what was done with the 2009 SDO. And the process we went through is very much different. And that was also done under a different owner, and different priorities were being dealt with at that time. We are now here in 2023. Different time, different conditions, different interests seeking to be satisfied.
Last one for me. So from your remarks, I get the sense, to what extent is the site already environmentally degraded?
I've spoken to that in reference to the golf course and the open space that's a subject of much concern. I think I've said enough in my statement around that. Anyone can do their research around golf courses. Golf courses aren't typically areas other than being open space from an aesthetics point of view, but the content of that space is also important. The golf course is predominantly invasives, minimal amount of endemic species, and even how golf courses are managed are not to propagate, at least from general conventional practices, good environmental stewardship. A lot of different chemicals used and other things. I'm not saying that that is necessarily predominant in our golf course, but the normal practices do not actually promote good environmental stewardship. It can be done, and we're going to ensure that's done. But until, we are going to ensure that a proper conservation management plan is in place so that the golf course's condition and the open spaces that surround the actual property will be improved. Because right now, we know that there has not been a lot of stewardship there. It's evident on the property itself right now. It is predominant of things that don't need to be here that we're all trying to get rid of.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That's the final question. Do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you for everyone who's come here, Premier, Minister Owen Darrell, Minister Daley Roban, Senators, MP Wade, MP Chris Famous, my technical officers, Ms. Razia Azar, the Director of Planning, Ms. Victoria Cadero. Thank you all for being here. And of course, the eminent member, longtime golfer, and member of the Tourism Board, MP Kim Swan. Thank you all for being here, and Senator Lindsay as well. Thank you all for being here with the media to receive this very important announcement that has been good for our country and good for the future of tourism. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Minister. That brings the end to the press conference. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.